and welcome to the Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny. I'm Johnny.
And I'm Callum.
You didn't interrupt me this week, that's unusual.
No, I thought I'd let you have your turn. I thought you deserved it.
Wow, that's
I've
surprising.
done it too often, I think. Maybe it's time to let you actually get through it.
Yeah, I know. I feel like listeners are very annoyed by you on a weekly basis for doing that. So
But that's why it's probably why we haven't skyrocketed up to thousands of subscribers.
Yeah.
I would subscribe if it wasn't just for that fucking guy who's always interrupting all the time and saying I'd buy that for a potato or whatever.
I know, he is the annoying one. That's why I often talk about replacing you, but there we go.
It's all talk. It'll never happen, folks. You know, he'll talk about this for years, and it's never going to happen. I am irreplaceable.
Just for everyone out there, my new podcast starting next week called Untitled Film Podcast with Dog Brain and Johnny. Will
He'll never join you. Oh, well, I thought this film, it was, I like Evil Dead. And,
I thought he's Northern.
Yes, sorry, I was mixing up the Dog Brain with the actor playing.
It's not an actor. What are you doing? What's happening? Why? That's not an actor. That's a real dog.
It's a real dog.
A-headed
yes.
person.
It's a real dog. Have you noticed how his lips only flap up and down like an anime character? Like they don't actually have any sort of meatiness to them.
Well, that's just how dogs speak.
Sure.
Anyway, if you want to debate such things, and often with the aforementioned Dog Brain video, where do we post things that you can interact with?
Well, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. It's Untitled Film Podcast. We often ask fun things. We actually do have an answer from Dog Brain Videos.
I thought we did.
What
was the question?
The question was, so we're reviewing a couple of product movies this week, which are all the rage at the moment for mid-budget filmmaking. And I put out the question, what products would you want to see made, the history of the making of? What would you like to see a movie of? And Dog Brain Video said he would like to see a Nintendo, which would actually be pretty cool. I'd like to see the making of Nintendo. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
It's in Nintendo as well. Isn't it like a super old company? I think it's 120 years old, but only pivoted to do video games when the NES came out or whatever.
Well, quite.
I think NES.
And the character of Mario was based on just their it was just their plumber. It was a guy called Mario, and they said, "Oh, that'll be a fun idea." Well, what would you like to see made into a movie?
About Furby.
Furby would be good. Actually, on the video game side of things, there was a very violent video game in the mid-90s, where
Manhunt.
they used. Yeah, not Manhunt. That was the more like early 2000s, but there was a more of a jokey one, Death Race. It was a knockoff sort of thing, and it was made in the Isle of Wight, and it became this huge controversy, Storm in the Teacup sort of thing. So I thought, in this sort of Blackberry mold of things, that would be quite fun.
There's quite a few interesting stories from the early days of kind of computing and things, because it was a bit like Steve Jobs and things like to say they were all like pirates because they were all kind of going out and stealing from each other and kind of soldering stuff together in garages and somehow finding stuff that made it work. I still think there's personally, we reviewed it, I think, on this podcast, the Steve Jobs movie, is it just called Jobs?
Yes.
Did we review it?
There
we
was
did.
two. No, we didn't do Steve Jobs. We've done The Social Network, but we haven't done anything because there are two, aren't there? There's the one with Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, I don't mean that. I mean the one with
Michael Fassbender.
Did we not review that?
No, we didn't.
Maybe we talked about reviewing it, or maybe we talked about that when we were talking about. I don't know. I thought we did. Anyway, in my head, I've reviewed.
You've got so much to say that you've probably reviewed it in your head a dozen times.
We might have talked about it when we watched The Social Network, maybe. Anyway.
You probably did refer to it in the way that one does when they're talking about other movies in order to talk about the main movie.
Anyway, I don't think it really works. I don't think it really tells Apple's story very well. It tries to very ham-fistedly tell Steve Jobs' life story, but it's incredibly ham-fisted. Actually, I think there's some quite. I think the best one I've ever seen about the kind of like birth of Apple, and it was kind of meant to be the birth of Apple on Microsoft, and they're interwoven. Is like a made-for-TV movie from about 1997 with one of the kids out of ER in it, called The Pirates of Silicon Valley, and I actually really rate it.
I've never seen that, but I think you have mentioned it a few times. But yeah, no, that there is more room to be made of more movies about that because they seem to bodge it a bit.
I think as well, I'm a car guy, so there's certain cars like the Mini. I feel like the making of the Mini, that would be quite a good, interesting movie. Or
yeah, that'd be fun, especially because you could tie it into the Italian Job stuff.
Yeah, and I quite enjoyed like the Le Mans movie that came out what was it called? I think in America, I think it's called Ford versus Ferrari.
Ford versus Ferrari. Here it was called, I think it was just Le Mans 66.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
And I quite like it was pretty cookie cutter and cheesy, but I quite like that. So there's quite a few stories like that.
The car racing stuff is really good in that. It's really well put together.
Meat
and potato stuff, but not bad meat and potatoes.
Absolutely. Be intriguing to see what this new Formula One movie that's coming out, starring Brad Pitt as the single oldest Formula One driver in the history of Formula One.
Well, when the strikes are over, we'll finally get to see it.
Yeah, if they're ever over.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
Speaking of strikes, that's the kind of thing we normally talk about in
the news.
And I think it's the perfect time to talk about the news. So, Callum, what's your first piece of news?
Well, it looks like John Woo is going to come back to making an American film. He hasn't made one since 2003, which was a very lackluster film. And that was, I think, Paycheck with Ben Affleck. But this film is called Silent Night. It's a Christmas set revenge movie, much in the mold of John Wick. And that's deliberate because some of the producers are the John Wick producers. It's going to star Joel Kinnaman, who we do like very much.
I do like Joel Kinnaman, yeah.
As a silent assassin. So there's no dialogue in this film
and
at all.
Probably hundreds of slow motion
and doves and shootouts. But the interesting thing is that the silent in Silent Night is literal. It's a film without dialogue. So he and his child were caught in the crossfire of a gangster shootout. His son died. He didn't, but it removed his ability to speak. And that happened over Christmas. And now the next Christmas, he's come back for revenge, he has.
So it's like a poor man's Die Hard.
Poor man's Die Hard, poor man's John Wick, with a little bit of core. I think we're artists, you know. We're not going to have any dialogue.
And the worst Mission Impossible.
And the worst Mission Impossible, yes. Mission Impossible 2, for everyone who was wondering. But that's the first bit of news. John Woo, he's back. Do we like that? Do we not? Tell us what you think. Are we excited about that?
I'm not.
I mean, the only good film he made in America was Face Off.
Yeah. And even that's not perfect, let's be honest.
I mean, it's so cheesy, but that's sort of the appeal.
Yeah.
So it has ironic appeal, which isn't what you want.
No. Anyway, fair enough.
And your news?
So my first piece of news is you may remember a movie came out earlier in the year made by Pixar called Elemental.
Yes.
It's now on Disney Plus.
It is indeed, yes. I noticed it dropped the other day.
And interestingly enough, so when Elemental first came out, everyone thought absolute massive box office bomb.
Yes.
Everyone thought it was going to lose, if not hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars. And it's had like the biggest legs of a movie I've ever seen. It's just been the little movie that
rabbit
could.
Out of the hat, especially in like Japan and other countries, South
Korea.
In the
States, it did about $150 million, which
it's just lingered. It had drops like 10, 20%.
So I think it had about $150 million budget. So by the old 2.5 times kind of maths, it probably made about $20 million in the cinema, which I think no one expected. And actually for films in the cinema, because let's be honest, with these dual release strategies and things, if they break even in the cinema for that Disney does, they're probably quite happy. So actually that was a surprising success because everyone's kind of written off Pixar recently, certainly from a making money point of view, if not creatively, although I think creatively, people are starting to question them a bit as well. And I just thought it was quite interesting. I just saw that
Yeah,
piece. Both that it's now out on streaming, but also that it's made some money.
I've been keeping an eye on that because it has been interesting to see that. That's our nerdy box office one. There's always one per month, I think.
And Callum, what is your second piece of news?
Well, if you wanted to see a movie come to the London stage, would you ever imagine that movie would be an adaptation of Paranormal Activity?
Yeah, of course.
Well, good for you. Then you're in luck because sometime this year, they're hoping to make Paranormal Activity a big London stage play. And it's going to be written by Levi Holloway, who is a scribe who's apparently written a big Broadway hit called The Grey House, which is a spooky, spectacular sort of thing. And we're going to be getting Paranormal Activity. It's franchising out the wazoo, that little movie that cost something like 20 grand back in 2009, I think it was. It's just spawns the kind of franchising that you just don't get out of this kind of movie franchise. So well done to the producers. They're now living in mansions and stuff. Are we excited about this? I can't say I am particularly. But,
it's interesting. I wondered if it's because there was I think it was called 2122 or something, a horror kind of anthology film, and it's thing that's gone onto the West End.
That was a big hit on West End that had James Buckley from the Inbetweeners, and I always forget her name, but Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And it's going wide now as well, so it's going on a national tour. I don't know if they're still in it.
No, they're not. They were the original cast. The original TV and movie stars don't stick around for longer than 3 to 6 months.
Well, you say that Buckley, I can't imagine he does a huge amount else, but anyway.
Well, he's got his Cameo money.
Oh, he does. Apparently, he's one of the richest people on Cameo.
In the UK, at least.
Yeah. But anyway, no. So I wonder if it's something to do with that. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Obviously,
horror works well on the stage, like The Woman in Black.
Exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. And I know it's not necessarily quite horror, but some of Agatha Christie stuff kind of bordering on horror, and that kind of works.
Anything spooky kind of works because you're secluded in a darkened room, and you can really get the atmosphere going.
Yeah. Anyway, excellent.
And your second bit?
Yeah. So my favourite working director, who is whom, Callum?
Oh, David Fincher.
Good. You do listen occasionally. He has a new movie called The Killer with Michael Fassbender coming out.
He does indeed.
I've seen bits and pieces of, and there's been some featurettes and things for a while. But it has been getting absolutely stunning reviews on the festival circuit.
Was it Venice it came out at?
Pardon, sorry?
Was it Venice it came out at?
I think it was, yeah. I think it was later. It was too late for Cannes. So it must have been Venice, unless it was Berlin. But anyway, it's been getting absolute raves. It's kind of gone. It's almost meant to be a little bit of like a kind of old school, not spy,
like a lean,
but
stripped down sort of 60s style thriller.
A lot of back projected.
Cool.
Michael Fassbender in cars and things, and it does look really good. And it's just always, Michael Fassbender is always incredibly enjoyable to watch. Let's be honest. So
yes, he's very charismatic.
Yeah, Michael Fassbender is always very charismatic and interesting to watch. So, yeah, I'm really excited for it, and I'm glad to see it has been getting good buzz.
Yeah, me too. It sounds like something I've seen the reviews come out. It does seem to be tearing out all the festival screeners. It's one of the big hits of this year's festival season, along with some others.
Yeah, good. Anyway, on to the main part of the podcast.
The main event, you could say.
Some would say that. The meat, is that what you've called it before?
The meat and potatoes.
Interesting.
Are you hungry?
No, I am not. Anyway, so Callum, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, the two films are Blackberry, which came out this year, and it was a festival hit of the previous year. And that's about the creation of the Blackberry phone, if the title didn't give that away. And we're also going to be matching that with The Founder, which is about if not the creation, the popularization of McDonald's and how it's spread across the United States. And that's with good old Michael Keaton.
Excellent. I'm going to take the Blackberry film this
Okay,
week.
yeah, go for it.
So long ago, in a land called Canada Town, there were a young group of merry men who
I want to see where this is going.
who decided or worked out that they could get email onto your phone when no one else thought you could. And one day, they met a guy called Bulsecki. And this guy knew nothing about technology, but he knew how to get people to do what he wanted. And they teamed up and created the most amazing, powerful mobile phone company in the history of the world, Blackberry, until it wasn't anymore. That's the film.
Yeah, that's the film.
This film stars Jay Baruchel.
I always say Baruchel, but that might be wrong.
I heard a Canadian say it the other day, and I can't remember what they said, and I feel like they said it right. But anyway, I've forgotten the other guy's name.
1 second, I do have the IMDb up.
You know who I mean, though.
I do know who you mean, and the name is Glenn Howerton.
That's it. It was just really annoying because I know Glenn Howerton's name, but it just popped out of my head in that second. Anyway, Glenn Howerton of We're Standing Philadelphia fame. I've only seen him live on stage this year. Just forget his name. Anyway, in a bald cap, and they're both excellent. But anyway, Callum, what do you think?
No, it was excellent. It's a very scrappy affair. It's like it has a lot of the similar sort of, especially in the screenwriting of something like The Social Network, where it's all fast chatter. It's all about, technical jargon, which is spun in a way to make it very amusing. As you say, Jay Baruchel and Glenn Howerton, they are very excellent. And I should say it's directed and co-starring. Jay Baruchel's mate and co-founder, co-leader, co-creator of the Blackberry is played by Matt Johnson, and he also directed the film, and he's a comedian. You might know him from Nirvana, the band The Show, which is quite popular on YouTube. And it has this scrappy, rugged charm to it. I've always maintained that Canadian filmmaking has a sort of edge to it. It's got a lot of similar qualities that you'd find in North America, especially a lot of talent that starts in Canada. Canadian talent like Jay Baruchel goes over to Hollywood. So it has a certain amount of prestige. But whenever they go back to make a film in Canada, especially an indie film, there is a sort of edginess to it that you probably wouldn't get even in the American indie scene. And that certainly exists here. I mean, I do have some kind of minor reservations, but they are minor. Johnny knows this, but I do have a bugbear about sort of bad wigs, bad bald caps, and I think in this film,
I really hate it. Least important part of a movie.
I hate it so much. I was watching their wigs all the time.
Well, the most ridiculous thing was I remember when we watched that really surreal, weird owl movie, and all you could talk about was the wigs.
Oh, it's terrible, awful. It's just really bad. I also one of the shows we'll be reviewing next week about the LA Lakers. I can't stop looking at their awful wigs, but anyway. Which is slightly at contrast with the naturalistic filmmaking, because I'm not sure if it was shot on film, but it has a grubbiness to it that makes me think that it possibly was 16mm, or there are ways now...
Too crisp for 16mm.
I did think maybe it was... there are ways now that digital filmmaking can use kind of old lenses and things to kind of give a slight throwback feel, but it had a slight grubbiness, dirt beneath the fingernails, which I really liked. It's all handheld filmmaking, so you can really see the flop sweats and everything like that. It has a kind of weariness to it where they're all tired all the time trying to outpace their mistakes and outpace everything, especially as things ramp up and the Blackberry, which was super successful at one point, becomes not so super successful. I do wish that at times they slowed down a little bit in order to, just a couple of moments, maybe to let the characters breathe. I wanted to see a bit more interaction between Jay and Matt Johnson before things blew up and then before things fell apart. I wanted to see a little bit more of their, so the idea is that Glenn plays this besuited businessman who talks in business deals, and they're the nerds with their glasses and pocket protectors. And you see them have movie nights and stuff and quoting Monty Python and all that kind of nerdy stuff. I wanted to see just like a little bit more of that, and let some of the jargon go just a few times, especially as very famous actors came onto the screen for only 2 minutes. Like, you'd get Carrie Yules or I forget his name, but the very bald guy that yells that they bring in to kind of be the enforcer. He's a very popular character actor, and his name is Michael Ironside. And Martin Donovan, like really great American and Canadian character actors. I wanted just a couple of moments, like, why introduce these characters with such great actors only to get them to do nothing really? But these are minor reservations because I really liked the roller coaster edginess of it all.
So do you know something slightly interesting? I don't know if you've read this. It's going to go on TV to be re-edited as a 3 1-hour part TV series.
Oh, really? I know, I didn't hear that.
Because something that Callum hasn't said is structurally, it's kind of based over 3 time periods. It's kind of based with the kind of the early days and the kind of people going, oh, hang on, this actually could be a thing. And then it's kind of based on, okay, we have the most successful phone in the world. Every celebrity wants us, but we've got growing pains. And then it's based on, okay, we've jumped the shark. And they're going to basically build it out. And I wonder if those characters will get a better shake when they do that.
That's interesting, because that was really my only reservation. It's a minor one, really. I mean, I enjoyed the ride, but I did feel sometimes they were sketching over and skipping over relationship stuff that I wanted to see a little bit more of unearthed. So maybe that will do that.
I actually think they're quite lucky in that there's quite a depth of material in that. It did go through 3 phases. It was a young, scrappy upstart, and then it was the biggest smartphone company in the world. And then, as everyone started to want smartphones, somebody else came along and was like, I've got something more modern in my pocket. And I think it does a good job of doing those. I really like the acting, particularly the lead 3 actors. Like you say, I like its scrappiness. It's quite interesting. I watched an interview with, I think it was with Jay and the director, I've forgotten his name.
Matt Johnson.
And they're obviously both Canadian. It was on a Canadian TV channel, and Jay was talking about like how he absolutely despises iPhones because he loves his Blackberries because it's a little Canadian upstart, and they did care about it. They were like, this was like the local company kind of done good that then got eventually eaten by the might of the American capitalist machine. And I quite like their kind of take on it. And that's kind of what it feels like. They're a young, scrappy upstart. They don't never really have the funding or the money or the people behind them they want, because people in them, like, obviously the biggest mobile phone market in the world, or certainly was, it probably is China or something now, but it used to be the US at the time. And they were like, these big US companies not really taking them seriously or trying to undercut them and stuff. And they managed to, against almost all odds, because they didn't really have the money to develop these things, build the biggest mobile phone company in the world. And I think that is the movie's a bit of an underdog movie. I think it's quite low budget, and it's definitely a bit of a passion project for all the people involved. And I think you feel like we always talk about this. Callum likes like earnest movies, and I do think this is actually a really earnest movie. Like
I thought it was. I didn't get this sense that they were taking the piss out of them or enjoying their downfall. Certainly.
No, but as being comedians, they understand the comicness of it and the kind of comic tragedy that was there. And there is a comic tragedy. There is a kind of ridiculousness of it. There is all the kind of characters involved. I actually saw quite a good interview with the real Balsecki, and he was talking about like I'm quite happy to laugh at myself and laugh at it. It was in some ways a bit of a silly situation, and we were just some like guys that started a company in a tiny little room basically, and ended up billionaires out of it, and then had a bit of a downfall. Like Icarus, they flew too close to the sun, some would say. But yeah, no, it is. I really enjoyed it. I think, like you say, there are some characters that feel a bit throwaway, which I think could be fixed by the TV series. And I think it does at times probably bang its head against its budget a little bit. But other than that, no, I really enjoyed it.
Yes, me too. I think it's a very high recommend.
Excellent. I think, unless you've got any more to say.
No, I think we've summed it up. I think we've done the Blackberry in, much like it did itself.
Absolutely. And I think that takes us to a commercial break. And welcome back.
Welcome back, and I'd buy that for a Blackberry.
Well, they're not worth anything anymore.
True.
Anyway, Callum, so it is your job to impart the listening public with the basic storyline to the movie The Founder. Go.
Yes, so The Founder is the story of Ray Kroc, played by Michael Keaton. He starts the film, he's trying to sell these milkshake makers across all the diners and fast food joints in America. And at that point in America, in the mid-50s, it's all about waitresses coming out on roller skates and getting harassed, bringing them to your car, and the order's always getting wrong because, you know, these poor waitresses have to deal with kind of all these schmoes being very rude to them. And he's trying, and he can't sell these things. And eventually he comes across a restaurant that will. And they'll not only will they buy one, they want to buy like 8 or something like that. And he goes out to investigate because they're like, this can't be right. There's something wrong here. And he goes to the very first McDonald's run by the McDonald brothers, who are, I forget their first names, but it is Dick McDonald and Mac McDonald, played by Nick Offerman.
What about Ronald?
Hey, John Carroll Lynch. And what he discovers there is that the whole thing has been streamlined. So rather than waitresses coming out, you collect your food in a paper bag. There's no foods that kind of adds to the menu and just makes things more complicated, like steaks and things like that. It's just burgers, fries, milkshakes, and soft drinks, and that's it. And it's a hit. He goes to find out more, and he finds out that they've created this whole streamlined routine. And
this buddy system.
Yes, and this guy, being the snake oil salesman that he is, he's always got a thing in his back pocket. He's always got a deal. He's always got an invention. He sees dollar signs in his eyes, and he goes, "I can franchise this." And along the way, he thinks, "I bet I can run these guys out of business." Just the McDonald's brothers chew them out so that it becomes his, and so that he can become the founder of the title. So, Johnny, what did you think of The Founder?
I think it does a very good job of telling the story. I think looking at the history of it and things, apparently it's fairly true to life, although possibly the relationship between the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc actually possibly isn't quite as antagonistic as it comes across in the movie. I really like the central performance for Michael Keaton. I always like it. He's at kind of his most chewing the scenery, Michael Keaton. And I quite like that. So I've got an idea. Franchising. Batman. I'm Batman. It's kind of like Michael Keaton. I enjoy Michael Keaton when he's doing that and kind of just being silly and chewing the scenery a bit. And he does that very well. And other than that, it's just pretty standard biopic fare.
These are the hardest films to review because there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's perfectly fine. The production design and costume design, it's set in the mid-50s. It does a good job at that. It's a nice potted history. If you like that sort of period of American history, then you're going to enjoy watching this because, you know, it's very much the time of those cars, those suits. And if you're interested if Americana is your bag, like if you're the kind of person that really goes wild for early Disney or early McDonald's or neon signs and all that kind of stuff, then I think you're going to get a real kick out of this and there is a certain type of audience that goes for that. Like if you always walk by kind of antique shops, you're always going to see some 1950s diner kind of sign.
Especially always, in Herne Bay.
Especially, Herne Bay is like Elvis signs and Americana stuff.
Tiki bars.
Yeah, exactly. So if that kind of thing is your bag, then it's probably one of the best examples of it. And the performances are really good. I really like the McDonald brothers, Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch.
Yeah, they're excellent as well.
Always good value for money. They're great character actors, and they rub off each other very well. It is Michael Keaton's show, though. As you say, he is very much at his gnarliest, as you so adequately did an impression of. It's probably his closest to Beetlejuice he's been in a while. But there's nothing really much to say about this. And it's also a very standard product movie, going from a little outfit to being franchised to the little guys, this being the McDonald brothers, getting chewed out of the game. Like, it follows the nuts and bolts. It's meat and potatoes. It's tab A, slot B. There's nothing wrong with that. If you like this sort of thing, it's perfectly acceptable. I'm actually struggling to find things to compliment or just something, a minor negative did pop into my head. All these biopics do something similar. Is they'll have the first wife character whose existence is she's only there
to nag
and to wag her finger, and they have her played by Laura Dern. What a waste of Laura Dern.
She's in it for 2 minutes of screen time, and every time she's like, "When are you coming home, honey?
Why can't we go on more dates? Why can't you take me out?" Is all that kind of stuff. Like, why have Laura Dern do that? What's the point of paying Laura Dern, presumably at least $1 million or $2 million, or maybe several 100,000 at least, just to do nothing? Or his next girlfriend, who is played by, and suddenly I'm forgetting her name too, I'm terrible with my names today, Linda Cardellini. Again, really great actress. She's in about the same amount, and she's there to flirt and to she actually comes up with the idea for the powdered milkshakes. But again, you probably had to spend a good $300,000 on Linda Cardellini for nothing to do. What's the point? So otherwise, those are minor niggles, but all biopics do that. They all do it so that they can boast that they got Laura Dern or whoever, and it's pointless. But otherwise, they've wasted Laura Dern, and that's it. That's the real only negative. Otherwise, it's just fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does a very good job of telling the story. It doesn't feel too long, doesn't feel wasted. It does have a good set of actors in it who are all doing a pretty good job. So you can't really, in many ways, criticize it, but it doesn't make you go, it's not a Social Network or where it's really broken the mold and you've gone, wow, this is, this tells this story in a completely different way. It looks different. The style suits the movie and stuff. This is just incredibly well set dressed, incredibly well put together. It's a decent script, nothing spectacular script wise, but a decent script. Tells the story very well without too many embellishments, and it's pretty well acted from a very talented cast. And there's not much negative to say about it. But
nothing really. I mean, it is hard to come up with things. I did enjoy watching the early days of McDonald's where they had this military sort of outfit where they'd have one guy chopping this and one guy cooking meat and one guy. That was kind of fun.
And then turning. Well, they still have a similar version of that. If you've ever watched McDonald's,
they
have the person doing the fries, they have the person grilling the burgers, they have the person putting it together, and they were the first to do that. And that's, well, I was going to say what all fast food restaurants do, but as anyone's ever been in a Burger King recently, they're not speedy.
Or a Taco Bell.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think that about brings our reviews to a close, Callum.
Wraps are all up.
So, Blackberry, what are your thoughts?
Bad wigs aside, it's really good. It's really fun. It seems to me like this miniseries might kind of fix a few problems that not minor problems that I had with it, but my minor reservations are that it's a little bit too scrappy for its own good and it sketches over things. Otherwise, nothing really to complain about. I think a good solid 8 out of 10 for me.
I hate to agree, but I'm also thinking 8 out of 10. I think, it hits its budget a couple of times. The wigs don't bother me. I actually think they add to the kind of comedy of it. I think it does something a bit different to your standard biopic. It is just a bit funnier. It's a bit sillier. Does a good job. I'm quite intrigued to see what happens with this 3-part series. I think it could be entertaining.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. And The Founder. What are your thoughts?
Meat and potatoes right down the line, Americana. I'm tempted to give it a 6, but I think I think I enjoyed it slightly less because I've seen it twice now. I think I would have, if you asked me the first time I saw it, I would have given it a 6. But because the standard biopic stuff was just so standard, I think I'm going to lower it to a 5 just because that the over familiarity with biopic tropes just kind of
You love a trope.
Yeah, I do. I love my tropes as much as I hate a wig. I love a trope. But yeah, but overall, it doesn't do anything wrong. It's still something to recommend on like a Sunday afternoon sort of film, as we often say. But it's perfectly adequate, and that's its worst sin, I guess.
Fair enough. I actually think I've seen it 3 or 4 times now, and I think it is one of those films. It's like I just want an easy film to put in the background. It does also make me want to eat McDonald's when I watch it.
Wonder why?
A bit like Super Size Me was always the same, which I feel like is the opposite of what Super Size Me is meant to make you want to do, but it did usually make me want to eat McDonald's. I really enjoy Michael Keaton and the rest of the cast, really, even down to like BJ Novak's and things. I think there is a really well assembled cast. I do think it visually looks really good, and there's not much to like. I personally don't think to pull apart from it, but there's nothing also that sets it massively ahead of the competition, really. So I think for me it deserves a 7. I think it does. Okay. It scrapes a 7, but yeah, it's definitely room for improvement.
Yes.
We'll say never going to be an Oscar winner, put it that way.
No, I certainly don't think so either.
Excellent. So I think as a roundup, that means we both gave Blackberry an 8, so it's got an 8 out of 10. So go watch it, or maybe wait for the mini-series. I'm not sure where it's going to be in the UK. I feel like it's being done for FX, so I might be wrong, but I feel like that'd be Disney maybe in the UK. And we averaged out a 6 on The Founder, which has just been added to Netflix. So if you haven't seen it and you've got nothing to do this Sunday, why not give it a try?
Give it a go. Why not?
Excellent. I think that brings this week's podcast to an end.
I think so.
So thanks once again for listening, guys. We'll be back next week with a exciting sports-related episode. Woo!
Woo-hoo.
Callum's favourite thing.
Yeah, listen to how much I don't know about sports.
Yeah. And in the meantime, have a good week. Bye.
Later. Stop it.